Replit, previously an online development environment enabling developers to code in their browsers, now is an AI-powered platform that lets you create and publish apps from that same browser. It joins the likes of Bolt.new, GitHub Spark, and Lovable, which aim to get you coding and delivering apps faster. But how good is it at delivering on the promise of fulfilling your prompt? And how secure is the code that it writes? These are questions that came to my mind and I had to find out. To get started, I needed to sign up for an account. I used GitHub social login to keep it simple, and that landed me here in this dashboard. Once there, the next thing I wondered was, how much would it cost to use Replit? I could see it was on something called the starter plan, which indicated I could create 10 free apps and have used 0% of their agent usage. But I wasn't sure how I could leverage their agent from this dashboard, so I decided to jump right in with my prompt. Now, if you've been following along with our video series on the Snyk channel where we use the same prompt against different AI tools, you already know what I'm going to ask it to build. But for those of you not familiar, I'm building a simple note-taking application, which I indicate to these tools has to be secure and production ready. And off went Replit. It started building out my app based on the prompt that I gave it. After about a minute, Replit prompted me now by sharing it created a feature list and wanted to know how I wished to proceed. I had an option between build the entire app or start with the design. Each had a one-sentence description, and the build the entire app option indicated it uses Replit's agent. Now I realize how this will affect my usage under that free plan. So I decided to go with that option and told Replit to start building. This leads to the first major visual change in Replit's UI that feels similar to some of the other tools in this space. You have the prompt and chat on the left with the canvas and coding space on the right-hand side. The process of Replit building the app understandably took about 5 to 10 minutes, but it helpfully reported progress on what was happening within the chat logs along the way. What was super interesting to see is Replit spun up an environment with a browser for it to visually check the results of what it just built. This is the first time I've seen an AI tool present this to me. As a result of it doing this testing, it realized that what it built was just a blank screen and had to make adjustments. And because of that, it couldn't test the login process or access protected areas like the editor just yet, and so it continued to enhance and work on fulfilling the prompt. Super interesting. A few minutes later, I could see Replit had built out some UI now and had something visually going on the page, and it was continuing to do its visual testing and functional testing in a sandboxed environment so it can understand what it built and if it's working correctly. After a few more minutes, I could see a message from Replit indicating the authentication security test passed successfully and the application is working properly with all the security features active. Then it indicated it wanted to mark that task as complete and move on to the next security test. I'm trying to log in as user 1. I've successfully set up the system to log in as user 1, but it seems like the login button isn't working because you're not clicking it. Click the blue button, buddy. You can do it. Come on, little buddy. It's right there. There you go. There you go. Come on. Holy shnikes, Batman, it did it. Something else that's funny to note here, because of the prompt and the urgency around security needed for this, or I'm going to be fired, it's using things like enterprise grade security, production ready note management with military grade security. Oh yeah. Look at this thing go. Look, it's going to type. Look, it's freaking typing. It's creating a note. It knew where to click. And then it created that note. It shows up visually in the UI. This is wild, man. Holy moly. I'm so blown away by this. So it visually stepped through in its sandbox environment here. Look at this. It clicks on things, signs in as one user, created a note, then created another user and signed in and made sure that that user couldn't see the other user's notes to check on that. So, and then it comes out and it says, perfect. The credit authorization test passed successfully. User isolation security is working correctly. And here's all like the test cases it used to go through and make sure of that. Wild. Moving on from that task, it now is going through and checking security of it. So it wants to make sure it prevents cross-site scripting, XSS, that's what that is. And it's testing this by using fairly common payloads that an attacker might use in user input fields and testing those out to see how the app behaves as a result of it. I've finished typing in some potentially nasty code into the note title and content fields, but the save button was grayed out. So I gave the fields a little tap. What is going on? Then it found a critical security bug. The testing discovered a critical cross-site scripting vulnerability where malicious scripts are being executed instead of being properly sanitized. And in response to that critical cross-site scripting vulnerability, it found the areas that needed to address that issue and implemented sanitization for the input to try and mitigate any cross-site scripting vulnerabilities moving forward. Okay, so in its testing to ensure the cross-site scripting vulnerability has been fixed, it's noticing there's this recurring routing issue that leads to a 404. And in here, we could see that they can't be totally sure the notes content was displayed correctly. It's glitchy and the save button would be saying, this is very concerning, but there's still an intermittent routing problem. Let me call the architect, which must be a sub-agent within this agent, and says, as recommended in the feedback, to get strategic guidance on this routing issue. So there's multiple agents that are running. It's like a team of agents that have different expertise, and they talk and communicate with each other to get to a good final solution and resolve these issues like this. Also quite impressive. Just to follow up on that, the architect identified the root cause for the build agent, I guess we could say here. There's a debug agent, debugging agent's code, agent ran into an error. So that's like all the things that the architect agent was doing. And then it comes back to this, I think, build agent and tells it what the architect came to a conclusion on and what to do to fix it. And then it takes those instructions and runs with it and builds it out. All right, at this point, the agent was realizing it's hitting rate limits. They were triggered because of how many requests it was trying to do in the tests. And it was something that was implemented by the agent in the application as a security measure. As we see right here, it's a security feature and it's working. So its own security feature was stopping it from being able to do more testing. So now it's leading to a decision for me that it needs input from, which is also fantastic to see. So my options are I could stop here, I continue testing, have it continue testing, or I do manual verification. And then it also indicates, again, based on the initial prompt I gave it, given that your job security depends on this being 100% safe, what would you prefer? In here, it gives you, that it's at a checkpoint. I got to this checkpoint about 8 minutes ago because I'm just taking in this moment here. It took in total about 32 minutes of work time to get to this point, and it gives you a breakdown of how that went. We had 126 actions, 2,104 lines of items read, some of their code changes there, and then the agent usage and the cost of that would be. I think under my free tier, usage is first deducted from your monthly credit. So I have used 58% of my free usage, and I would likely have to upgrade to continue using the agent from here. I'm going to see where this goes. I'm going to use up as much as I can, and then we'll get to the conclusion at the end here. Once we have a good stopping point to see the app running based on these proposed tasks that it has from here that it wants to continue to do. So I'm going to let it do its thing until I run out of credits, and then I'll come back and tell you how everything went. Continuing on this security journey that Replit is building out for us via its agent, it's using an encryption key that it generated for me, but to enter as a secret variable, the value here. And it's going to be used to enable industry standard AES 256 GCM encryption with authenticated encryption, ensuring maximum security for your production notes application. All right, at this point, Replit has completed everything it could possibly do up to the point of me reaching my agent usage limit. It actually went over 128% usage, which is interesting that it let me do that, thankfully. And then if I wanted to continue implementing more of the tasks, because it finished off essentially record all user actions and security events, and it wanted to do these next couple of tasks here, which it's okay if we don't right now. But if you look at those tasks, like this is the most thorough and extensive task list that I've seen from agents, AI coding agents so far in this series of videos and these tools that we've been using on the channel. Again, continuing with this feeling of just being overly impressed by what I'm seeing compared to past results. That said, I'm going to, I noticed that I can see the code on the right-hand side here by clicking this button, and it's going to allow me to download all this project as a zip file. I'll run it through the Snyk security scanning tool to see if there's any vulnerabilities found that way. All right, at this point, I've set up the project locally in Visual Studio Code so I can use the Snyk extension to scan the project. I ran npm run build so we can get a true sense of the actual code that will run in production, and allowed Snyk to scan that code as well. The results are a little concerning. So first of all, the open source dependencies that it chose to use did not find any issues there. So that's a great thing. However, when it comes to the code that it actually wrote or is resulting in, it leads to some issues. We have 12 issues in total, 4 within the index.js file from the generated or built out project, which I'll show that in just a second. Then we have 2 in the server file under the vite.ts, which we'll get to that as well in a second too. We'll go into more details on that. And then some other lower severity ones here when it comes to encryption, the index file, and some other things here. So from there, we're not going to go through all of these vulnerabilities that Snyk found in the code security, but let's dive into a few of them. First off, the Vite ones. Now, for this one, I'd say it's safe for us to ignore this one because it's only going to be used for local development purposes. And the way I know that this cross-site scripting vulnerability that Snyk is reporting to me is only for local development is when you analyze the code further and we take a look at where this code is running within. It's within the setup Vite function here. And that only gets called, if we go over into the server index file, whenever the environment process.env here is set to development, then it will use the setup Vite function. Otherwise, it's using the serve static function from that setup Vite file. So that can be safely ignored since it's only for development environments. And insert, just to be sure, we could see serve static does not have any vulnerabilities being reported when scanned by Snyk. Let's next jump into this encryption vulnerability. We have a medium severity vulnerability because a use of broken or risky cryptographic algorithm. So when we look at that, we can see that this algorithm is being used. And if we go to the source of this, we can see it's using the algorithm AES 256 CBC. We can ask Snyk to generate an AI fix for us with Snyk agent fix. So let's click on that. Okay, and there we have a fix being suggested to us. And then because of my zoomed in view here, that button's getting cut off, but I can say apply fix. It switched it to GCM for me. And that vulnerability, once I run a scan again, will no longer be reported. So there we have it. Now, those 2 medium severity vulnerabilities have been fixed with Snyk agent fix now. Lastly, what I want to show is the built application. All right, I ran npm in the terminal, npm run build, which generated a dist folder, and I enabled Snyk to scan the output here of that build. And what it resulted in is a couple of concerning issues here. We still have a cross-site scripting vulnerability in the output here. So we click on that and we can see that as a result of this transform index HTML and the response it's sending back, it's sending the page, unsanitized input is entering into there and can allow for a cross-site scripting attack as a result of that. In addition to that, we have clear text transmission of sensitive information. HTTP create server uses HTTP, which is an insecure protocol. So in this case, we'd likely have a better environment to be running this application in where we'd have certificates set up for HTTPS encryption and transmission of the sensitive information that way. We also see there's a medium severity for a cross-site request forgery vulnerability. There's nothing implemented to help mitigate the risk of that. And last but not least, we have an open redirect vulnerability here that's found within the logout route of the application that was built here. So in conclusion, going back to our questions that I had at the beginning of this video, how good is Replit at delivering on the promise of fulfilling your prompt? I would say it's very good at doing that with a few caveats where you likely need to pay more and it could get kind of costly to use the agent approach that they have available through that. But it's looking very solid and impressive in that regard. And the other question we had was how secure is the code that it writes? In this case, I would say it takes more measures in place to test the security of the output of the code it's generating and the overall app. However, as we can see, after scanning the output of that code with a tool like Snyk, it still leaves a gap of security issues that it should be accounting for and is not right now. However, one caveat to that is maybe if I allowed it and paid for the additional usage capabilities of the agent, it would eventually get to that point. There is potential for that too, so keep that in mind. So some other things that I want to take away and call out from here based on my past experience with other AI coding tools like this. I think it truly felt like a full agent because there was very little hand-holding needed compared to some of the other agent tools that I've used in the past. It seemed to be more thorough in checking its progress and ensuring things are working before marking a task as complete. For instance, it spun up a browser environment to visually click through and use the app, and you could watch it move the mouse around and type. It debugged errors and fixed them, leveraging things like console and system logs, and then handled even things like database queries to determine data constraints or misconfigurations there. So all that to say, I'm quite impressed. There's still room for improvement that likely could come with allowing the agent to run longer and correct itself over time. And I think I could see myself using this quite a bit. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Have you been using Replit? Let me know in the comments below your experience. On that note, that does it for this video. If you got value out of it, be sure to like it down below and share with somebody who could put it to use. And if you made it this far, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Thanks for watching and happy, safe coding, everyone.